Thank you so much to everyone who is joining us online, and thank you to everyone who has joined us in person here at Johns Hopkins site. I'm Lisel Hintz, an assistant professor of international relations here, and we are incredibly honored to host this event. We've just watched the film Benim with Can Candan. This event is organized by the Media and Politics Initiative here at SITE, as well as the SITE MENA Club and the SITE Pride. So thank you to everyone who has been involved in the organization of that. Can Candan is, of course, an independent filmmaker who's made a number of important films. One of the first ones that I ever watched in Turkey, for 3 hours on the university entrance exam process. A fantastic film called Walls, Varlar Mauern, on anti-immigrant sentiment in Germany, just after the wall fell. Currently working on a project called Nuclear Alaturka, I believe. Really a fantastic honor for us to be able to have you here. And of course, a very well-respected former faculty member at Boğaziçi University, who, while I was there over the summer, was dismissed from his position and banned from campus. He was also the advisor for the LGBTI club, which was also closed down at Boğaziçi. So he has been a longtime advocate and ally. He's incredibly talented filmmaker. So we're so honored to have you here, Can Candan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me to, and an honor for me to be here with you, although virtually. Thank you very much for the invitation again, and thank you to everyone who was part of organizing this event, and thank you, Dr. Hintz, for organizing this event.
Excellent. So as I said, we've just watched the film, and for those of us who've joined us online, I highly encourage you to do so. One of the questions that I wanted to start with is, given the difficulty as you're documenting of so many individuals in coming out, in telling their stories to their families, I was wondering how you were able to recruit participants for this film. And were there any that you asked to participate and didn't participate? Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the hesitations that they may have had, or did they see this as an opportunity to share their voice? Just a little bit about how it came together.
Sure. The idea for this film came about at a conference at Boğaziçi University in the year 2010. There was a conference organized by the Cultural Studies graduate program of our university. The title of the conference was Trans Identities and Queer in Turkey. And part of the conference, rather the program of the conference included a panel that really struck my attention because it was something that I've never heard of before. It said that the parents of LGBTI plus people would talk about their experiences. This was something that I did not hear about before, something I did not read about before, the parents' experiences. So I was very curious, and I went to the panel, and I was so moved by the stories that I decided right there and then, which is quite surprising for me to decide to make a documentary film so quickly. But I decided that I should make a documentary about these stories, about these experiences. And I went to the panelists after the panel was over, and I introduced myself and I said, I would like to make a documentary with you so that your stories could reach out to a larger public. And they said, we've been waiting for you. So this was a big shock for me. So the short answer to your question is the latter. They were so ready and so willing to make their voices heard, and here was an opportunity for them to do so through a documentary film. And also they told me a little story. 2 years before that panel, they had been to Italy because the Italian family group invited them, and they had seen a documentary film there about the Italian parents, and they were so moved and so excited about this documentary film, and they had been saying, oh, we should have a documentary of our own. So this was the beginning of a collaboration that has been going on since then for the last 12 years, to be exact.
Thank you for sharing that. So one of the questions that I was really interested in is, I understand now sort of where the film gets its genesis in that particular meeting, in that set of discussions. But one of the things I think that's so fascinating is the focus on the parents. You know, we do see the children at the end, or sort of near the end. But there's a, a couple of quotes in there that I think are so powerful. One, and I can't remember if it was Mehmet or Metehan, but it says something like, they wouldn't let us in parliament, but they let the moms in, right? And then you hear one of the moms say, oh, we're not activists, we're moms, right? We cook and we do those kinds of things. So can you talk a little bit about why you thought it was important to spotlight the voices and the experiences of parents?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is that we are so used to, at least in the context of Turkey, hearing stories of parents who do not accept their children, who kick their children out, who even kill their children. So the story of parents accepting their children for who they are and informing themselves, educating themselves about issues related to LGBTI plus, and also not only doing that, but also moving beyond and becoming activists for not only their children's rights, but the rights of all LGBTI plus people, not only in Turkey, not only in Istanbul, but all over the world. And they've been kind of an example, at least in this part of the world, for other countries to form their own family organizations, such as, for example, Albania. There was a screening recently in Albania, for example. This story was missing. That's why I wanted to have this story amplified, because this shows that another family is possible and that there is a light, even in the context of all the homophobia and transphobia that we have been experiencing in this country recently. And this is a part of the reality, but this part of the reality is not something that's usually seen. So I wanted to amplify in a way that there is another path possible. So it's a story of hope, that to show to everyone that another family is possible, another way of being is possible. And back to your first question, I mean, they were the 7 because I felt like I didn't answer it fully. In the film, you see 7 parents, and these were the parents who were part of the core group. So I didn't have to recruit anyone. I didn't have to, ask someone to step down because there were too many people talking or whatever. They were the 7. So, I didn't have to convince anyone, or I didn't have to do anything. They were the 7 who were ready to speak publicly in front of the cameras, and they were more than willing to do so.
Yeah, I talk a lot in the course on politics of protest that I teach about how film can sort of be a political act in and of itself, or a political product, a way of amplifying marginalized voices, of documenting, of creating the hope and solidarity that you mentioned. But you also mentioned the homophobia and the transphobia in Turkish society and in the Turkish government. And this film is released in 2013. But since then, I think we've seen sort of a constriction of that space, or a tightening of pressure. As I was sort of introducing the film prior to watching, the language of family values being used to target LGBTI individuals and their families. Can you talk a little bit about that environment and what has happened to your film and sort of the trajectory of the film itself?
Yeah, I feel like the politicians and the government is kind of lagging behind the society, and they are trying to impose this, as you said, this conservative values of especially family values to target LGBTI plus people and LGBTI plus rights, not just the people, but rights as well. And since we finished the film in 2013, or as we finished the film in 2013, there was a tremendously supportive media coverage of the film in 2013. Almost all the press helped us publicize the film in a way. And we had many screenings. We had sold out auditoriums and cinemas, and we had a theatrical release. We also published DVDs, which were, being sold at that time. We released 3 DVDs. I mean, 3 editions of the DVD copies of this film. And but then, starting with the year 2015, as you said, the space has diminished in Turkey, where for expressing protest, expressing struggles of basic freedoms and rights. And what has happened is, first we experienced the banning of the Pride March. So the Pride March is not being allowed in Istanbul for the last about 7 years. And then more recently, for example, at our university, at Boğaziçi University, with the protest against the appointment of a government appointment of a rector or a president in 2021, the student LGBTI plus club was targeted. Subsequently, it was terminated, and students were taken under custody and also tried for just holding rainbow flags. So we have been experiencing these things, and more recently, even just last week, the president said something about strong families do not have LGBTI in them. Clearly targeting LGBTI plus people. And the parents organization that you see in the film immediately responded by saying, obviously you don't know about these issues, and we are here to talk about these issues. So they've been also vocal about their opposition to such statements because it doesn't reflect the reality. But going back to what I said in the beginning, I feel like the politicians and the governing party and the government is lagging behind the society. The society, I think, despite what they're trying to say, what the government tries to say, despite what the mainstream media tries to represent, has moved to a certain level of acceptance of LGBTI plus people and LGBTI plus rights. And I think this is a fact, and our experience of making this film and having this film in distribution for the last 9 years shows us that that is the case.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of questions in the audience. People definitely want to be able to tap into your experience making the film, perhaps ask a little bit more about the context in which it was released. So you're not going to be able to see them, but we do have some students with microphones who are going to be walking around. So if anyone would like to raise their hand and ask the first question, please do so. And then Lion will come to you with the microphone. Okay. Joanna and then Christian.
Thank you for being here with us today. I just had a question about the Pride March and if that was what year that was in, and if the Getty protest had anything to do with how large that march was.
Dr. Hintz, can you repeat the question for me, because the audio is difficult to comprehend?
Absolutely. So yeah, that might be the best way to do it. So we do have microphones so that people here can hear, but for the recording and for you. So the question was from Joanna, who's a student at Georgetown and is studying Turkey and Turkish. And she wants to know if the Pride March that is shown at the end of the film Was that 2012 or 2013? And if the Gezi event had anything to do with the turnout, the spirit, with sort of that ending sentiment that we see in the film.
Okay, so the Pride March that you see in the film is 2012, almost exactly 1 year before the Gezi uprising. And after the film was released in the movie theaters, actually, when the film was released in the movie theaters, it was exactly the same time as the Gezi protest. So, unfortunately, for in terms of the screening of the film, we didn't get much. We didn't get many viewers because the movie theaters were full with tear gas. Because the movie theaters were in the middle of the sections of the cities, both in Istanbul and Ankara, where the protests were taking place. So, but the posters of the film were part of the Gezi space in a way. So the posters were in the Gezi Park. The posters were on the Istiklal Street, in the main street in Taksim, the center of the town, on the billboards. And the parents were actually putting on the posters of the film and walking around in the Gezi Park. So, in a sense, the film became part of the the Gezi environment, Gezi Park environment, which is also, I think, very special for us. And then the Pride March that took place, in a way, during Gezi protests or at the end of Gezi protests, were the largest Pride March ever in Istanbul. In the film, you see the big Pride March, the street full of people. In 2000, so that was, as I said, 2012, around 50,000 people marching. In 2013, coinciding with Gezi, there were 150,000 people walking. So with the Gezi spirit, the Pride March also tripled in size. And then 2014 was the last time we were able to walk.
And then the Pride March was banned in 2015, and they cite security concerns, but I think given the size of the march that they've seen, the 2 previous years, they're seeing that there's a tremendous amount of support for it. I noted to students that those Pride marches still take place, that people attempt to gather, and then they generally face quite a lot of police intervention. I remember trying to attend this past summer, and the metros were closed, and it was gated off, and there were all kinds of different obstructions put in place. So I think we had a question from Christian. You can try and get the microphone, and then if it doesn't work, I will amplify it for John.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much for coming. Are you hearing me? Okay, perfect. So my question is more about like the direction of the film itself. I noticed in the beginning segment with the interviews that for certain lines the parents were saying that the screen cut the black. And I thought that was a really powerful way of highlighting the most cutting remarks that they were saying. And they do that. So what inspired you to make that choice? What you to highlight?
I'm sorry, I lost the audio completely. So can you please repeat the question?
Okay, so Kristen is asking sort of about the making of the film and the sort of cinematography of it and the ways that you use, particularly during the first scenes of the interviews. You highlight their names and then it will cut to black sometimes, and you're sort of creating these pauses. So can you talk a little bit about how you designed or sort of thought about that initial segment of the film, which is quite I think a large portion of the film where they're engaging in those interviews. Sort of the decisions you made about, when you're sort of cutting to black, which particular lines you're using, who's speaking after the next person in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so as you saw in the film, it takes place in the living rooms, the actual living rooms of these parents. And they're not interviews per se, in the sense that I did not necessarily ask them questions, but rather I gave them topics to talk about. So these were actually very long recordings. And from these very long recordings, obviously we tried to, in editing, we tried to create a narrative. Also because, these are fragments of a longer narrative, I wanted to create a sense of these fragmentation. And that's one of the reasons why I use the blacks at certain points. So inevitably, I guess when you're watching it, it kind of emphasizes the fact that it's fragmented, by definition. The other reason why blacks are used is because there are moments when in editing we try to stay in a certain feeling for a little bit longer, or here they're breathing, for example, or sighs. So it was important for us to kind of, in that sense, manipulate time by giving little pauses, and it helps you to follow the narrative, but at the same time have little pauses where you can, instead of just following some word, you can stay on that feeling for a little bit longer. And that's how we decided to edit in the first part. And as I said, the first part takes place in the living rooms. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Other questions from the audience? Raise your hand and we will perhaps try to translate them, get them amplified. Anyone here?
Hi, yeah, thank you for the wonderful movie. I just want to ask, in the scene when they acknowledged that none of the trans women were there, perhaps for their safety or that they just didn't want to be on camera. Were you able to interview them outside of the camera at all? Or how have you kept up with the group in general?
Were you able to hear that? No, okay, all right, so again, we can hear it here. So were you, of those that you interviewed, we know that you meet them through that particular panel. Were you able to keep up with them? Maybe perhaps what was the duration of the filming? Do you still have contact with them? How they reacted to the film? Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. As soon as I said in 2010 that I would like to make a documentary with you, I became a volunteer in their organization. So they, in a way, invited me in. I started going to their weekly meetings, and we've been together since then. So I am part of the larger family of Listag, the parents and relatives group. So yeah, we see each other all the time. Just a few days ago, we were at a screening here at a local branch of the Turkish Workers' Party, Türkiye İşçi Partisi, and we are in constant communication. We try to promote the film. We try to not only promote the film, but also react collectively to whatever is kind of on the agenda. So when the president says something that we feel is discriminatory, then we respond on social media altogether. And we've traveled with the film quite a lot, actually, in the States, in Europe, and we make sure that not only the filmmaking team is represented in these screenings, but also members of the family group is represented in these screenings. So if possible, we travel together and meet with the audiences. And especially in Turkey and in this region, it makes a big difference when people see the participants in the film in person after the screenings, and the family group has used the film to kind of initiate local groups that are similar to their organization, local support and solidarity groups. have been kind of initiated, and the film has been a tool in kind of bringing people together and kind of starting a conversation about these issues.
I think that's one of the ways in which film can serve as again, sort of a source of solidarity, of an amplification of voices, a piece of culture to kind of rally around, of bringing voices together. So it's wonderful to hear about the experiences that you had with that particular group. And as I said, you've been an ally and an advocate for quite a while. So we have, we're sort of about the time we need to wrap up. Do we have maybe one or two more questions from the audience? Would anyone like to ask? Yes, please. And again, I'll repeat it once the person asks.
Thank you. So I feel I have a lot of questions on the technical side. So basically, as an observer or a watcher, when I saw the social event showing up in this film, very active, very warm, the atmosphere is very good. But I feel that I guess it would be hard to make it come true because basically the viewers would feel the viewers would be known that there's a camera beside them. So how would you just fix this problem when you are doing shooting? And do you think that perhaps the personal relationship between the shooting group and them?
Yeah, so there's a sort of a question from perhaps a budding filmmaker asking about the level of comfort or comfortability of those that you're filming. So you have the scenes in the living room where you say you're not necessarily asking them direct questions, but giving them topics that they can sort of elaborate on those how they want. But then in some of these other scenes, at these social gatherings and meetings, and then at the Pride March, is there any level of discomfort, or people feel slightly nervous or anxious with cameras around? Does that change their behavior, do you think? Are they maybe acting or saying things that they wouldn't? Obviously, as a documentary filmmaker, you work with this quite a lot. Can you speak a little bit on that subject?
Sure. I mean, a couple of things. One is, there's a very high level of trust and comfort that has established between myself and my team and in a way, the subject of the film. So they've seen us, and we are part of a larger family, really. That's how it feels for them and for us as well. So, there was a really high level of comfort. But at the same time, of course, they're aware that they're being filmed and recorded. And because they're also activists, they're very aware of what they're doing. So they know that they're in a way on a stage and they are performing. So it's both. They're very comfortable with us, so they're not either shying away or feeling uncomfortable of being filmed. But at the same time, they are performers. They're real people, but because they have been activists. They also know that they're on a public stage, so to speak, in front of the camera. So it's both, but I think they are very sincere in what they are saying and doing in front of the camera in this particular film. So I don't think that level of awareness of what they're doing is really coloring in a way what they're saying and what they're doing in this film, because they're doing what they usually do. But they're also, as I said, very aware that there's a public there in the future who will see this film over and over and over again.
Hopefully over and over and over again and in many places. So we are extremely lucky to have been able to view this here, and even more lucky to be able to hear from you directly. So congratulations on the film. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much.